Uh,
I'm having a great chat with Ola Gjeilo, Norwegian by birth, living in New York City since 1960. Since when? Since 1991? When? Tell me.
no, I moved to the city in
There you
2001
go.
to study at Juilliard, and then I've been kind of back and forth. Lived in California a couple of times, in LA and Santa Monica,
Yeah.
but now I'm back in New York City.
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks for straightening that up with me. Um,
Sure.
Ola is a composer of choral music primarily, but we're going to talk about that. There's a lot more than just choral music in his head going on. And as he just said, 2001 came to New York City to study at Juilliard, study composition and piano, I assume, because you're a wonderful pianist.
Thank you. No, actually, I've always just studied composition in college, but I piano has always been like just have private teachers and kind of done on the side. But I never wanted to do that in college or practice 8 hours a day kind of thing. Yeah.
Really, I stayed away from the piano proficiency test at Cal State Northridge and went to Cal Arts, crazy Cal Arts instead. So I
Oh,
know what
that's
you
a
mean.
great school.
But you are actually, you are cheek by jowl with the piano every time I see you. We'll talk about that.
Sure.
Okay, and what's going on is the Ola is one of the composers being performed by the Santa Barbara Choral Society, coming up here in Santa Barbara on Saturday, March 29th at 8 o'clock in the evening, and Sunday, March 30th at 3 o'clock in the afternoon at the newly refurbished Lobero Theater in downtown Santa Barbara. And just for all of those of you in Southern California watching, I'm going to give you the ticket number at the Lobero Theater, the telephone number. It's area code 805 in Santa Barbara, 963-0761 to order tickets. And here's what this Choral Society program is going to be. Stand by, Ola. I'll get to you in a second.
Sure.
It's a program called Past and Present Masters. And the first half of the program will consist of two Te Deums, Haydn's Te Deum and Bruckner's Te Deum. So you have sort of
Oh,
the
nice.
beginning and the ending of the Age of Enlightenment or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful, very interesting. With full orchestra, soloists. Let me see, I better go through the soloists here. Tamara Bevard, soprano, Nikkei Sinclair, mezzo, Tyler Thompson, tenor, and Ralph Cato, baritone. So the first half is going to be this wonderful Haydn Bruckner program. And then in the
Nice.
second half of the program, it's going to be the present masters, and you're looking at one right now in front of me. But we have our own, if I may say so, in Los Angeles, Morton Lauridsen. The Santa Barbara Choral Society is going to be performing Lux Eterna, and those of you who don't have never heard Lux Eterna must be dead. Uh,
That's a wonderful work.
and then the second half of of that last half of the program is music of Ola Gjeilo, and we're looking at Northern Lights, Prelude, Ubi Caritas. I hope I'm pronouncing correctly. Forgive me,
Mhm.
Your Holiness, and the Ground. And we're going to talk about all of that good stuff in just a minute. Let me check my notes and see what I might have forgotten. Here's the thing. Apparently, from what I've read, oh, by the way, everybody needs to go to YouTube. I mean, the world now functions on YouTube. Simply look up Ola's name, and I'm going to have to spell it because it is Norwegian. Ola, O-L-A.
Mhm.
Gjeilo, spelt Gjeilo. And I'm taking this time because Ola's website, the YouTube performances of his choral music in particular, but there's also a fabulous couple of pieces that I listened to this morning for wind ensemble, for big concert collegiate band. Gorgeous stuff. We'll talk, I hope,
Oh,
if I have
thank you.
time about that. But there's just so much up there. That's how you all out there can get familiar with Ola's music. You're not going to be disappointed. Fabulous, gorgeous, deeply moving. We're going to have to talk about what those constant what those tonal areas are that make people like me drop down to my knees and weep. Okay. But
Sure.
let's kind of get started. You went to Juilliard. We've just
Yeah.
understood that you although you are a pianist, we're going to talk about that in a bit. You decided composition. Who was your teacher at Juilliard or teachers?
My teacher was his name is Robert Beezer. So he was my teacher. I was at Juilliard twice. Actually, it was I did part of my bachelor's there, and then I went to Royal College in London for a couple of years, and then back to Juilliard for my master's. So I studied with Bob both times.
He must have drawn you back somehow.
Well, yeah, I miss New York, and I loved London. It's an unbelievable city, but I just feel so at home in New York. So I miss New York a little bit, and I just love Juilliard. Such a great experience.
Yeah. And I'm a Trinity College of Music London
Oh,
guy. Studied
wow,
conducting with Bernard Keefe there. Listen,
nice.
here you are at Juilliard. Uh, I know that you have interest in film music and other media, but what is the origin of this? Apparently, you've written a lot of choral music. Why?
I don't. That's a good question. I think that's where I sort of I didn't get my first real classical composition teacher until I was like right after high school. So maybe I was 19 or so, um, and he was very he did he does everything, but he's definitely very knowledgeable about choral music and really good at that stuff. So I guess I was just always drawn to that, and I listened to quite a lot of it when I grew up. I loved, listening to, and I used to listen to more older. A lot of I was pretty conservative when I grew up. I listened to a lot of older music, Bach and Handel and um, choral stuff. I'd listen to Bruckner a lot and Brahms. So or chants or that kind of stuff. So I grew up loving, and I loved a lot of early music too, which you can kind of hear in some of my earliest choral works. But yeah, so I just kind of started that area. I think my teacher felt that also. It's it's a good place to start for young composers because it kind of teaches you kind of organic, natural voice leading. I think because of the voices and their uh, and the way they work and their limitations and that kind of stuff. So I think it's really useful that way. It's also I think choral is one of the areas that it is you have the most opportunities to get performances early on. Because of the great amateur movement you have within choral and in this country wind band too, of course,
Yeah.
which are the two great areas or the two biggest areas, I guess. So and then I guess I just things kind of started to go well in that area, and then I just kept getting a lot of commissions in choral, and I since I love choral, that that made a lot of sense, um, and I always wanted to be a full time composer, so that's something I always wanted to do, and so working with choral makes a lot of sense in that way too.
So let me review, which is that you very practically sat down one evening or afternoon and said, now here's how it's going to be. I'm really good at this choral stuff. It has a huge market, especially in North America, and I love the sonorities and everything else, and I'll go there. Now, it didn't hurt to win a Grammy. We're talking about Northern Lights, the CD with the Phoenix Chorale, that is exclusively Ola's music, and it
Oh,
won.
that did not win the Grammy
Oh,
though.
well, there you go. What was it nominated at least?
No, it wasn't that year actually.
Well,
But their previous album won a Grammy. The Phoenix Chorale's previous album called "Spotless Rose," yeah, won a Grammy like a couple of years before.
see what I mean
Uh,
about no editing? So
yeah,
we
right.
got yet another
Uh,
problem
and
squared
it
away.
wasn't really like a conscious choice when I started writing choral that I didn't even know I was going to be in North America at all because that was back in Norway. So
Mm.
that kind of came later, but mainly it was just because I always loved that kind of music and just grew up with choral music.
Yeah, and it just occurred to me that Norway, a huge choral tradition, big choral tradition in your country, in your homeland.
Yeah, there's a lot of choral stuff going on there. Sweden even more. They have a massive choral movement.
Mm.
Uh, I maybe the biggest in the world per sort
Mm.
of per capita. I wouldn't be surprised, but yeah. So there's a lot of great choral music going on in up in Scandinavia.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we see the roots, and Northern Lights is no accident as a title, right?
Yes, although the text has really nothing to do with Norway, but yeah. definitely.
So let's talk just a little bit, and then I want to talk about your function as a pianist and how you work with choruses around the world. Um, these just absolutely gorgeous sonorities. Speak to me a little bit. How come? Why? Where'd they come to you, etc. Can you do that? Just you know what I mean? That gorgeous, elegant, superb, very beautifully dissonant, and then resolved so elegantly. That kind of those kind of soothing sonorities.
Are you talking? Sorry, are you talking about like in music in general or in
I
certain?
would say in general because
Oh,
the wind band pieces are likewise. That's they're beautifully put together. I conducted Seattle Wind Ensemble in Seattle for about 12 years. I love the wind ensemble repertoire, but it is a little limited in terms of sonorities. And yet, bam, you have captured something superb in your instrumentation for wind band and the sonorities that you use. Is this one going to get us anywhere?
maybe. Wow, that's a good question. That's hard to harmonically. I mean, obviously, I've always written in a very tonal or modal kind of idiom, and I think it always mattered to me that I never wrote tonal music or anything like that because just because I wanted it to be pretty, but because I want my music to have a sense of redemption or resolution of transcendence, like ideally, that's what I strive for. In that there's nothing wrong with dissonance or conflict, but it needs to always resolve. At least for me, like in art. Otherwise, you're just kind of stuck. You're stuck in a dissonance. You're stuck in a neurosis, basically. So I kind of like to use the the metaphor of like war. Like if there's a war, you're always striving for some kind of resolution, like peace, because otherwise it's disaster. And but for a long time, we really didn't do that in art, or for a while. Um, and through kind of modernism, we explored a lot of really dark and disturbing places, which was really necessary, I think, and brave in a lot of ways. But we got maybe a little bit stuck in that realm. So I think to me, just what's important is that we go through dissonance always with the aim of resolving them, and maybe that's why you have a sort of a feeling of harmony here in my music. Maybe I don't know.
I think so, and
It's
also
not a not a really a revolutionary idea, but
your dissonances, like Lauritsen's, are very gentle dissonances. The whole feeling, I think, from
oh,
what
yeah,
few pieces I've heard, it's a very consoling. You actually used words like redemptive. It's all that good stuff. That's kind of why I was trying to figure out whether it's a dreamscape you get into or what. What that resolves in these this beautiful use of chordal structures and harmonies and all that. I think
yeah.
we've
It's
talked.
really it's really I can't really it's I really just write whatever feels good to me. It's that simple. So there isn't really any sort of intellectual basis or model behind that. It's very, or I think my process is very sort of intuitive, and in that most stuff is not planned beforehand. And maybe because I come out of improv a lot as a piano player, so I'm kind of used to just coming up with ideas in like a split second, just because
Mhm.
you have to.
Yeah.
So that might be part of the reason. But I always was conscious that I didn't want my music to be too cerebral or
Mhm.
intellectual, or kind of too far removed from the heart.
Well, I think you just put it exactly right always. You have the exact right choices of words to get us all clear. Now, I'm going to now do a little slight shift, but here's what really impressed me, and it's because you were born in 1978 and you're still a kid, but also the idea that think of Mozart, think of Schubert. I mean, you are at you are where they died, if you get my drift, and you have 2/3 of the more rest of your life to compose. And what if Mozart were able to live into his early 90s? But that's beside the point. I just want to, unless you want to comment on it, your
No, I wish.
longevity.
I really wish that had happened back then.
Yeah.
But yeah,
But
but
I want to talk about your pianism because you do have also a CD of total solo piano improvisation. Yeah. And by the way, everybody, all you have to do is go to his website, go to YouTube. Tons of stuff up there. You're going to fall in love immediately with this man's music. But I also was really intrigued to see that, sure enough, the pianist at many of these performances in Central Washington at the university there and elsewhere, sure enough, that pianist looks familiar. It turns out to be you. I love the idea that you visit, you participate, you are part of the whole process of preparing your work. Can you talk about that a little bit?
yeah, I mean, yeah, most performances I of my music I never even kind of know about, but so
Like
it's
here.
great. So, but then I try to travel as much as I can, to when people invite me out to perform with them. A lot of the time, it's in conjunction with a commission. So maybe this group has commissioned a piece, and then they invite me out to whatever, to Germany or Kansas or whatever, to coach the group in performing the piece, and often I'm playing piano with them, either improvising or just playing my written out piano part, if there's piano in the piece. Um, and more often, I guess they do sort of concerts that are just all my music basically. So it's sort of a Ola Gjeilo concert thingy. But that specific thing with CW, with Central Washington University, and Gary Weidenar, the conductor, is a little bit different in that it's specifically a video project. So, because I noticed they did the first piece they did of mine was a piece called Contrition, which is a cappella. Um, and I was just kind of struck, and I wasn't involved in that, but I was just struck in how good the videos looked. And they use multi-camera stuff, which is
Yeah.
kind of unusual in most of classical music that we have, or in college videos and that kind
Exactly.
of stuff. So I thought, oh, I mean, that's really cool. And as you say, YouTube is like where everybody goes to YouTube now to check out stuff. And so I've been really conscious about putting stuff out there as much as possible that looks good and sounds good, because a lot of it doesn't always. It's a lot of amateur stuff,
Yes. Yeah.
naturally, which is really cool.
That goes with the
But
that goes with the territory of choral music in
absolutely,
this
and
country. So.
I love that. So, but it's nice to have some stuff that is really kind of polished too, and it's really an expression of how you wanted it to sound and look. So I went up there a couple of times, and then we recorded a bunch of videos, and it's been really fun. And the editor Matt, he has kind of added more and more elements to it. And the last few videos, we have one called "Across the Vast Eternal Sky," which is a newer piece of mine. Then he added more kind of nature footage and that kind of stuff as well. And there also another new video called "Luminous Night of the Soul," which which he added more kind of split screen things and stuff
Saw
that we
that.
don't usually do in
Yeah.
classical music videos as much. So that's been a really cool project.
And the level of that chorus in Central Washington, at Central Washington University, is superb. The training, it's all in the training. That it's superb
Yeah,
choral
so that's
training.
all down to Gary, and so yeah, of course, that's the best thing about the whole thing is that they have such a wonderful sound, and yeah, they're just wonderful to work with.
Well, there are about 14,000 other questions I'd like to ask, but we're running out of time. People have short-term something or other. So, so let me just repeat a little bit of information for everybody because I want people come up to Santa Barbara from Los Angeles area for an afternoon, and that's what I'm hoping people will do. It's such a beautiful
Yeah.
city. The weather's
Yes.
gorgeous. The Libero Theater is stunning in its rehab, and this is the oldest functioning theater in California, so it has
Oh.
has a great history, beautiful, beautiful venue.
Cool.
So just to get, and then I have one last one for you that'll blow your brains out, I hope. Santa Barbara Choral Society with orchestra and soloists will be performing at the Lobero Theater in downtown Santa Barbara on Saturday, March 29th at 8 in the evening, and on Sunday, March 30th at 3 o'clock in the evening. And the telephone number in Santa Barbara to call to get tickets is area code 805 963 0761. And I know, as I've said, a lot of people watch this from Southern California, and everybody knows it's worth an hour and a half drive to come up and just enjoy Santa Barbara. It's such a beautiful place, if I may say so, as
Yes,
an
it
inhabitant.
is.
So here's the last one I ask everybody, and I hope it doesn't you don't go, oh ugh, I've heard that a million times, but I've become very curious and I about what, and so I ask everybody, what is the, as corny as it may seem, what, if you have any recollection even, what was the moment in your life when you said to yourself at age whatever, this is it. This will be, because there's no retreating. Once you make the commitment in this profession, it's for life. Do
Mm.
you have any recollection of a moment or an influence maybe in your family, something like that said, "Up, yeah, this is going to be it"?
I think I was probably four. So not no. So it's really. I think I just always knew that that's what I wanted to do. Yeah, I think yeah. Honestly, I really even I just started. I think I started playing piano very early.
Hmm.
We got a piano when I was one from my grandmother, and I think I just started noodling on the piano as soon as I could kind of reach. I was my fingers were long enough, I guess. And So yeah, I don't really remember when it started, but it was really early, and I think I was lucky that I had a good ear, so
Hmm.
I could hear kind of what harmonies sort of sounded good and
Hmm.
which ones didn't, and I could hear stuff on the radio or whatever, and kind of play it back. So I didn't really need to learn to read music until later. And I think from the very beginning, I just always felt like that's what I wanted to do, and so it wasn't really a matter of like a choice. Other than that, I never even kind of considered the possibility of doing something else.
Well,
Um,
you just answered the question, as all of the wonderful, fabulous musicians that I've had the real opportunity and joy to interview. There are key things. So when I write this major sociological doctorate exercise, the early age, 3, 4, every single time,
oh, okay,
and in my own
yeah,
life, sure enough, 3, 4, that was about it.
yeah,
Where there was just there, even if it was an unconscious certainty, there was some
right.
kind of certainty. Yeah, and just one last thing, was there anything? Because some come from families that were completely unmusical. Mine,
Mm,
for
mm.
example, and others that I've interviewed. Were your parents singers in choirs, anything like that?
Yeah, my mom. She was never a musician, although she just kind of enjoyed singing. But my dad definitely was. He was a good, or he is a good amateur saxophonist.
Ooh.
And he played all his life, and I think at some point he wondered if he wanted to be a jazz musician on the trombone, I think. But then he switched to sax.
Very sensible.
Yeah, so but he became a psychologist instead.
Also very
And
sensible.
yes, so yeah, there was always a lot of music in the house, and he would play a lot of records and CDs of all kinds of genres, and not just classical, but jazz and pop and a lot of things. So I think that was really probably had a huge effect on me, and also me kind of drawing on a lot of different genres and enjoying, yeah, improvising and doing jazz as well as classical and kind of mixing genres a lot too. But my interest of sort of film music and that stuff sort of came more out of my own explorations, I guess, more than his influence. But
Yeah.
so yeah.
you answered the question, and I can see from little interferences that we'd better not press our luck any further. It's time. It's time to end. Ola Gjeilo, can't wait to meet you in person. The
You
performance by
too.
Santa Barbara Choral Society is on the 29th and 30th of March in Santa Barbara. I hope folks will get on the horn and order some tickets. It's a small hall, 660 people. You gotta get in quick. Thanks very much indeed for giving me some time this
Oh, thank you. It's great to talk to
afternoon,
you.
evening. See you.
All right, see ya.